Luffy being able, with assistance, to take down two Yonko, two emperors, and being able to claim the title of one himself, that was definitely the culmination. And another indicator for a saga being over is that hello and welcome. So, with Luffy and his crew departing from Wano Kuni, it seems that this arc, or actually I should say this saga, seems to have come to a final closure. And this is the reason why I want to do things a bit differently than usual. Instead of just reviewing the last chapter, which is also something I'm gonna do along in this video, but I want to talk more a little bit in general about this long arc and slash saga that finally is over, and what actually is the difference between an arc and a saga, specifically in One Piece, and how we can tell that that this is now a segment, a part that is bigger than just a small self-contained story, a saga that is now finally over. And how we are gonna name the saga, well, I still leave it up maybe towards the end of the video to come up with something creative that I'm gonna then also put into the video title, because this saga is more than just Wano Kuni, which I would say is an arc. But to make that point clear, I think I need to talk about what is the difference between an arc and a saga. And I'll give you like a few sources.
So, according to Urban Dictionary, an arc is the internal change the hero goes through in a story. It can be a positive change of character, a happy ending, or negative, or no change, which gives us a tragedy.
So, this is pretty much from classic plays. I'd say a definition that applies to a play that is classically like in a theater, a classic play that spans the time of 2 or 3 hours, where you have one arc, where the arc is the complete story. Now, many shonen stories, many shonen manga, specifically now we're talking about One Piece, are really long, so they have different arcs. So I think we need a bit of a different definition. So let's keep looking.
So, according to the website Merriam-Webster, here are a few further definitions of arc. Number one, the apparent path described above and below the horizon by a celestial body, like the sun. Okay, so for us humans on planet Earth, it seems like the sun is going in an arc. Number two, something arced or curved. Okay, so a building or structure can be arcing, that's an arc. Number three, a sustained luminous discharge of electricity across a gap in a circuit or between electrodes. Okay, a continuous portion as of a circle or an ellipse. Degree measured on the circumference of a circle. A continuous progression or line of development. Not either.
So now for a definition of the term saga.
1. A prose narrative recorded in Iceland in the 12th and 13th centuries of historic or legendary figures and events of the heroic age of Norway and Iceland. 2. A modern heroic narrative resembling the Icelandic saga. 3. A long, detailed account. That's maybe closer to it. Also, a dramatic and often complicated story or series of events.
So, for arc, definitions in the context of mass, astrology, architecture, blah blah blah, and so on aside, an arc is a self-contained story. A saga, on the other hand, is the original definition of a legend or like the story about a legendary or mystical figure aside. A saga, on the other hand, is a longer story and a series of events. In this case, a series of different arcs. And typing into Google difference arc versus saga, one of the first links that popped up was pretty much a Reddit link for a One Piece subreddit where someone asked that precise question. So are we gonna take that as the definitive answer for defining an arc versus a saga? I think not, but I think the first answer pretty much nailed it, and I think that's what the community, I guess, agrees upon. And that is, arcs are smaller stories, usually self-contained. A saga is a collection of arcs that all tell one big story. So moving on from that, we can look at One Piece and go through the story arcs. And the first story arc in One Piece is pretty much when Luffy bursts out of the barrel. Up to the point where he defeats Alvida, brings Koby to the marine base, frees Zoro, and fights Captain Morgan. So that's pretty much the first story arc. The second story arc, we have the introduction of Nami, and the adversary is Buggy the Clown. The third story arc is on the island, I forgot the name of Usopp. We get the introduction of the next crew member, Usopp, and the adversary is Captain Black. Next, we have the Baratie. The next central character that gets introduced is Sanji, and the adversary is Don Krieg. And followed by the next arc is again resolving around Nami, wrapping up her little arc, her character arc, inside the next story arc, which is Arlong Park, where the adversary is Arlong. And the final arc is Logue, before they venture into the Grand Line. So this is pretty much the East Blue Saga, the first saga, and if I count correctly, that's about like 5 or 6 arcs, and that's the smallest saga. So next we have in the Grand, once I reach the Grand Line, we have some smaller arcs and some bigger arcs, and what they all have in common is that they're on different islands, and each time having introduced as an adversary different members of the Baroque-Works company, so Crocodile, aka Shichibukai, Mr. Zero's mafia company, and each story, each little island is its own arc, like Little Garden, Drum Island, where Chopper gets introduced, and the adversary is Vapol. And then the final culmination is Alabasta, being its own big arc, and that we could call the Baroque-Works Saga. Then we have like a small mini saga, which actually just contains of 1.5 arcs, which is the Skypiea arc, where we have introduction of course, new characters, and then another arc which is later connected to the story, but in itself not part of a saga, I'd say, which is Thriller Park, where we get the introduction of Brook, and the adversary is Gecko Moria. Moving on, next we have Shabodi, where they meet Rayleigh, and the group faces off against Kuma, gets separated, which is its own arc, leading to Luffy ending up on Amazon Lily, which is an arc, and then Luffy deciding to venture to Impel Down arc, and then culminating in the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Marines. So we have pretty much that. We have that Shabodi arc, from that one up to the Summit War as a saga again, and then we have a big time jump. So, and from that time jump, from the time skip on, from the very moment the Straw Hat Pirates reunited at Shabodi, once they set foot on Fishman Island, that was pretty much the start of the longest saga we have in the One Piece story that lasted up till now. It seemed very insignificant, but the closure of the Fishman Island arc, where they ventured down to Fishman Island to begin their travel, their journey in the new world, the second half of the Grand Line, ended with Luffy declaring war to Big Mom, leading up to a confrontation with Big Mom, and then the next step seemingly being unconnected to Fishman Island on Punk Hazard, starting a long string of events with Caesar Clown, and then next Dressrosa against Doflamingo, again then being intersected, being cut with Sanji being taken away to Whole Cake Island, reconnecting to the events in Fishman Island, and then both these story strings finding their way together, culminating in Wano Kuni, where both Big Mom and Kaido have their showdown with Luffy and Law and Kid. And those three together, along with a big alliance and with lots of characters that were introduced along the way in this long saga, managed to take down these two emperors. So while we can clearly name, I feel we can name arcs based on the locations. I think we can name the arc, the events that happen on Punk Hazard, like the Punk Hazard arc, or we can call the Dressrosa the events on Dressrosa as the Dressrosa arc. We can even call now Wano Kuni as the Wano Kuni arc. But to give a name to this long saga, I'm gonna call it the Emperor, the Yonko saga, or the Road to Emperor, the Road to Yonko saga, as we get, this is the first time we have Luffy facing off what is made out to be the ultimate adversary in the One Piece world, Imu, like the shadowy mystery being that seems to control the world government. Aside, we were stated very early by Garp that above everyone are the Yonko, being so strong that they can protect their territory, that they have a part of the sea, control a part of the sea, being able to ward off and protect their ground, their territory against the Marines and the world government. So, Luffy being able, with assistance, to take down 2 Yonko, 2 emperors, and being able to claim the title of one himself, that was definitely the culmination. And another indicator for a saga being over is that we have an arc, a story arc. Aside from location-based story arcs, where we have introduction of new characters and an adversary, we have an overarching character arc, that spans over a series of arcs and makes up the saga. So in this case, it was Luffy's road to Yonko, to being an emperor, from the moment he challenged Big Mom, which was the first arc of the New World, to finally being able to defeat Big Mom and Kaido. Kaido was his match, Big Mom was Kid and Law's match. But either way, that is a significant change, and Luffy now will be looked different at from anyone inside the One Piece world, which is the biggest change, which will be the biggest change in how the story will further progress, as any character, everyone in the stories that's further gonna have an interaction with the Straw Hat Pirates, their treatment of Luffy and the Straw Hat Pirates will be utterly different, as before the Straw Hats always went in as the underdogs. They didn't come to Alabasta being the clear favorite. They faced always a bigger adversary. They faced Crocodile, who was way out of their league. It was the first Shichibukai, the first out of the 7 warlords they faced. They always faced someone with a higher bounty, someone who's a bigger threat, and now Luffy is there along with the others. Like, he is part of the strongest. So this is why the story from now on will change, and there have been speculations that this will be the last saga or the last arc. I don't think after Wano Kuni that whatever location the Straw Hats will journey to, that the next location will be the final arc. I think we will still have some arcs. Oda still has some story to tell, some interesting locations. There's still story around the Giants, the world government, around Blackbeard. Luffy still needs to be reunited with Shanks. So there are still lots of arcs and independent story arcs to be told. But I think we will move into the last saga. I think the next arc will signal where this is gonna go and where the confrontation is gonna go to. If it's gonna go towards a confrontation with Blackbeard, the world government, possibly Shanks, or some kind of triangle situation between the Straw Hats, Blackbeard, and the world government. And from this point, I want to give my short resume and a review about the last chapter, how I feel this arc, the Wano Kuni arc, was finished. And after that, I wanna give an outlook what I think will transpire next. So, first of all, how do I feel about the last chapter, the last two chapters? I think it was a clear finish. We have the Straw Hats on their ship, departing. We have the samurai and Momonosuke, them giving their goodbye and thanks to Luffy. And there's nothing too special about that. I mean, they are on their ship and say, like, Luffy throws his flag and says, not really in an arrogant way, like, this is my territory, make sure, like, no one's gonna F with it, but kind of like in a friendly way, like, here Momo, you know, I'm there for you. But I think that's all that's all in the realm of what was to anticipate, what was to be expected. There's nothing unusual. I was actually more surprised that the last chapter, like the goodbye chapter, ended on such an unspectacular, almost calm note. And I'm maybe this is my feeling. I'm kind of disappointed that that Yamato did not join the Straw Hats yet. I thought she was built up to be such an interesting character. I think she would add a lot of interesting and funny dynamic to the crew. Her identifying as a male, or trying to at least take on the persona of a male typical character. I wouldn't say like she identifies as anything like transsexual, as One Piece had played with that trope with the Okama. So but it's more about the persona she has, and that she identifies still as Oden, and says like she plans to do as Oden did, explore Wano Kuni first, and then once she explored her home country, hopefully meet up and with the Straw Hats venture out to sea and do as Oden did. And I felt like her trying to emulate Oden was always like I wouldn't call it a character flaw, but something where I would like her to grow out of, which would make for a really interesting story arc in Yamato. How she finds to herself, possibly accepts herself as being herself, being possibly an Oni, being the daughter of Kaido, and even accepting all the undesirable, unlikable things about herself, accepting herself the way she is. So I was really hoping that she would sail with the Straw Hats. So I hope she doesn't move into obscurity, like being off screen for too long. Also, Carrot didn't join the Straw Hats, a member that was anticipated. But maybe in the future, maybe we'll see. With the fight against the Yonko, specifically Law and Kid's fight against Big Mom, and Luffy's fight against Kaido, I was absolutely happy. I think that's I think these fights were plenty long. Maybe there's a part of the fandom who would have liked some more even more spectacular finish, specifically of Kaido, as supposedly Oda stated that just punching, just giving Kaido a bigger punch wouldn't be enough. I think fans were treated nicely. Luffy got power up after power up and lots of support from lots of people. I gave my opinion on the fight several times. I think Luffy rightfully deserves the title of Yonko. He defeated Kaido with all his might and proved his power, proved his position, and being rightfully appointed Yonko Emperor. But I still think if it were a one-on-one with both Kaido, Luffy being absolute at their high, Luffy wouldn't have beaten Kaido, and I think Oda chose to reflect that in the bounty. As yes, there is an in-world explanation for bounties, but in the end, this is a world that's created by the mangaka. It's a fantasy world, and the mangaka, the author, Eiichiro Oda, when he picks a bounty, he has something in mind, and he wouldn't give Luffy a lower bounty if he were if he were the opinion that Luffy is stronger than Kaido. Kaido having, if I remember, a bounty of 4.6 billion, Luffy now 3 billion. And Oda's, that's my interpretation, using bounties as a stylistic choice to convey to the reader how to rank certain characters and power on average. The implication is there that Luffy is not yet as strong as Kaido, but still, he is now one of the characters in the One Piece world with the highest bounty ever, and if we assume Kaido and Big Mom dead, I don't think so. Luffy is one of the currently living characters in the One Piece world with the highest bounty. I do expect Big Mom and Kaido to make a return, and here I want to transition to my expectations for the future. There have been so many many things came to a closure, but many new threads, many new story threads have been opened up and are now like tingling and waving in the wind. So we have the revelation of Pluton being in Wano. We have the whole plot about Wano Kuni opening up and that not having been opened up by Momonosuke. How Wano Kuni is gonna open up through Zunisha, through Pluton, through the world government, or possibly invading forces, Blackbeard. We have what's his name, the the swamp Logia fruit, Caribou, who eavesdropped on the conversation and supposedly, or that's what he said, wants to convey that information, transmit that information to someone. Who might that be? The world government? Seems not like in line with the world government. That doesn't seem to fit that character. It seems to be a character that fits more into Blackbeard's crew, like slimy, more moralless, dark characters. So possibly Blackbeard is gonna get information of Pluton. Possibly. So we might get the scenario where Blackbeard invades Wano Kuni, possibly uses his Quake Devil Fruit that he stole from Whitebeard to tear down the walls of Wano Kuni. But then there's also still the open story thread of what happened with Kaido and Big Mom. They were just smashed into the ground, straight down the center of Wano Kuni, where supposedly Pluton lies. So are Big Mom and Kaido gonna make a return with Pluton? I always had the theory that Kaido, even though he took on the role of an antagonist and of an adversary, I think he always displayed some very honorable characteristics, that he would like to fight his fights honorably, and that he seemed to enjoy his fight with Luffy, even seemingly awaiting Joy Boy, awaiting someone who could possibly beat him, dethrone him. So I had the theory that once should Kaido make a return, that he would not make a return as an antagonist, kind of similar to Crocodile, and that Kaido might possibly become not an ally, but an assisting force in the future story of One Piece, which, as I said, me thinking that we are going into the final saga, there is not so much to come. So yes, I think I said there are a few arcs I see, a few story arcs that could be on a few places like Elbaf, but we will get conclusions and resolutions to everything very soon. I think very soon. And the story will very soon build towards the final confrontation. So I want to put out a big prediction, a long-term prediction, and the theory that this is now the final saga that's gonna start. And the final saga's main theme is going to be One Piece. The One Piece. So the final saga of One Piece will be claiming the One Piece, acquiring the One Piece, and the revelation what it is, Luffy hopefully getting his hands on it, if it's like even a tangible thing, like a real thing. I don't think it's a treasure of gold and diamonds and crowns and just valuable goods. But I also don't. I also think that Oda is to be taken by his words, that it's more than just a concept like freedom, like Luffy saying he's the freest man in the world and the One Piece is freedom. I think it is a real thing, a tangible thing, as something that can be touched and acquired, but at the same time it's something greater than just a treasure made out of goods. My second prediction is that, of course, to no surprise, the final confrontation having to be something bigger than the last confrontation will not be Blackbeard, but the world government. But there will be possibly a short or like a transition arc where there is like a triangle situation between Luffy and Blackbeard and the world government. And another YouTuber depicted is and used the analogy of the world government representing order, Blackbeard representing chaotic freedom, and Luffy representing true freedom, like in respect to each other. Which is, yes, Blackbeard seems to be an opposing role to the government, an opposite, but at the same time he also is kind of like a mirror, like a flipped version of Luffy, and they are portrayed analogous in many situations and being opposing in many ways. Even their abilities, like Luffy being the sun god Nika, and his brother Sabo having inherited the Mera Mera no Mi, the flame fruit of his other brother Ace, them being in stark contrast to Blackbeard, who inherited both the darkness fruit, the Yami Yami no Mi, and the quake fruit, abilities which annihilate and destroy everything. Darkness versus light, the sun versus the nothingness of space or blackness. So they are even depicted as very opposing forces, but for Blackbeard to be an adversary that the reader takes serious, as there are lots of people in the community who argue, does Blackbeard even have Conqueror's Haki? Will this be like a thematic battle, like Luffy fighting with peak Conqueror's Haki and Blackbeard with his 2, or possibly him having already acquired a 3rd Devil Fruit, kind of like Haki versus Devil Fruit abilities, someone who earns it all and someone who rips it all, someone who tries to, through perseverance and hard work, achieve things, and someone who just takes things and tries to rob others to get stronger. That this is going to be reflected in their abilities. So I feel this might be a feasible confrontation, that they will fight with a vastly different set of skills, and that regardless of Haki, it's more a devil fruit based power which makes up Blackbeard's abilities. But to be taken a serious threat by the reader, Blackbeard needs to have a bounty that rivals Luffy's, or a bounty higher. So that means we need to see something from Blackbeard. We need to see Blackbeard doing something outrageous, which results in him acquiring a bounty higher than currently Luffy, who has the highest known bounty. That's currently Shanks. There has been the long it seems like a build-up confrontation between Shanks and Blackbeard, as it was stated that it was Blackbeard who gave Shanks his signature claw mark. So it might be that before Luffy faces off against Blackbeard, we will see Blackbeard confronting Shanks, possibly killing Shanks, leading up to Blackbeard acquiring a bounty higher than Shanks, again giving us this staircase pyramid structure where Luffy's adversary, whether antagonist, is always a step higher than our heroes, than Luffy. As currently it seems simply based off of bounties, Luffy is the one who's a step higher. So for Blackbeard to be taken serious by the fandom, by the readership, Blackbeard needs to be stepped up. But ultimately, I don't see Blackbeard to be the final adversary, as this has always been played out to be a battle for freedom. Luffy saying his dream is to be the freest man in the world and to have all his friends eat and to have no one starve. The world government seems to be the force that is most directly opposing that, and maybe we will get even like a four-way battle between Luffy, Blackbeard, the world government, and the Revolutionary Army. Something to top the war between the Whitebeard pirates and the Marines. Something bigger, something grander, and I think Oda will not disappoint us. What will be the next destination? Well, it was kind of hinted when in the last chapter, when Law elaborated where each of the Logue posts would lead to. So I don't think the next location is straight up Elbaf or like a big location, but I think the next location will be a setup, and in the next arc we will see more and more build up for the final confrontation. Wano Kuni is over. I'm gonna call it again, Road to Yonko, Road to Emperor saga is over, with Luffy being the new emperor, one of the new emperors. This has been the longest but also the grandest and greatest saga in One Piece, spanning the most chapters that any story section has ever spanned. Like, it was long and we got a conclusion finally. I don't expect the rest of the story of One Piece to be as long as the saga, possibly longer, but I think the story of One Piece will speed up. I think Oda's gonna increase the pacing a lot. I think this has been the best story in One Piece up to now. Everyone has their favorite arcs, their favorite part of the story. I think I can say that this saga, but specifically Wano Kuni, has become my favorite story, my favorite arc. And I think it will be hard to top. Like, we will not get such eye candy for the next few chapters, for the next arc. I think I think the next arc, like I said, is going to be one that builds up towards the final confrontation. So I think towards the end, Oda's going to top Wano Kuni. But I think Wano Kuni is going to stay as the greatest and longest arc that at the same time finished the greatest and longest saga in the whole One Piece story for a very, very, very long time. And I think we will only get to see that topped towards the end of the story. So the fandom should not raise their expectations too high for the next few chapters that are coming now, the next few months following this year, like anything that happens, anything that gets released in 2022 and towards the first half of 23, we will not get that peak action and high stakes so soon. So we will get lots of build up in the next few months up to first half of 23, and I think then we will get slowly more and more escalation in the later half of 23. It's really hard, I think, to predict how long Oda's gonna plan to have One Piece running. But One Piece started in, if I'm not wrong, 1997. So it's approaching its 30-year anniversary in a few years, and I think he will not have One Piece run longer than 30 years. I think like I said, the next arc will be a build-up arc with some shift in location to highlight different groups and different characters aside from the Straw Hats. I predict the possibility that there will be a shift in focus on away from the Straw Hat Pirates to different characters, different groups, as Oda has done lots of world building and he needs to connect all the strings together towards the end. So like I said, this year up to first half of 23 build up, and then later half of 23 and 24 we will have an escalation arc. And I think then the final arc culminating and finishing, rounding up the final saga and the ending of One Piece is something that we will possibly get towards like 25, 26, with Oda finishing possibly in 27, which would match the pace that we've gotten so far, assuming that the next arcs are going to be the last ones and that we are going now into the last saga. And that would also fit nicely with symbolically ending the manga on the 30-year anniversary mark around that. I could see that coming. But that also means we won't see that top peak action, like I said, for the next 6 months to 1 year. We will see lots of build up. So I don't want to repeat myself anymore. This has turned out to be quite long. And yeah, thank you very much for tuning in. Thank you and bye.